Ever wonder why your body suddenly refuses to keep going even when your mind says yes? That's fatigue. Fatigue is a temporary drop in performance when you just can't keep producing the same power or speed. It can come from the brain, classed as central, the nerves that activate muscle, classed as peripheral, or from the muscle cells and their metabolism. Think of it like a car running low on fuel. It still moves, but with less power and efficiency. In sport, fatigue shows as slower pace, weaker force, clumsy coordination, or poorer decisions.
Hello and welcome to the channel. This is a higher level walkthrough on fatigue in exercise. Today we'll explain what fatigue is, distinguish between both central and peripheral sources, and describe metabolic and neuromuscular mechanisms. That includes how an imbalance in pH, lack of hydration, or insufficient fuel availability can all contribute to fatigue. Don't forget, you can now find my sports science assessment resources and IA ideas on the Teacher's Test website, which are ideal for formative assessment in lessons or for learners to use as revision tools. I'll leave a link to my test shop in the description below for you. With that being said, pause the video for the interactive content towards the end and use the timestamps in the description to jump to different sections. Now, let's get stuck into the content.
The objectives you should achieve by the end of this video include being able to outline the primary types of fatigue, discuss the latest views on how fatigue may be conceptualized and how these views could improve our understanding of fatigue, outline some of the primary potential causes of fatigue in sport, and lastly, appreciate the complexity and interactive nature of fatigue via our interactive tasks, a few pieces of criteria content to get through today to develop an understanding of the mechanisms of fatigue. Here we go. Fatigue comes from two broad sources. Central fatigue is when the brain or spinal cord reduces the voluntary neural drive to muscles. This can involve lower motor cortex output, shifts in neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, a higher sense of effort, or protective inhibition to avoid damage. Peripheral fatigue happens inside the muscle or at the neuromuscular junction. It lowers force for the same neural input and includes problems with excitation-contraction coupling, aspects such as slowed cross-bridge cycling with muscle contraction, disrupted ion balances, running low on fuels, and buildup of metabolites can all cause peripheral fatigue. It's important to note that these two types interact. For example, sensory signals from tired muscles tell the central nervous system about local distress and can cut central drive. So fatigue is an integrated response, not only one site failing. Muscle fatigue comes from several local problems that limit force for a given neural signal. Let's start with fuel limits. Muscle glycogen runs down during long or intense exercise, reducing the muscle's ability to make ATP quickly. This is a classic reason for hitting the wall in a marathon. For very short maximal efforts, phosphocreatine depletion limits peak power. PCR needs oxygen and rest to resynthesize. Next, we have metabolites and ions. Fast glycolysis raises hydrogen ions and inorganic phosphate, which reduce calcium sensitivity and slow cross-bridge cycling, resulting in lowered force and increasing the sense of effort. Lactate itself is not the direct cause of acidosis and can be used as fuel, but it signals high glycolytic rate. Repeated action potential signals also raise extracellular potassium, which makes the muscle membrane less excitable and can blunt contraction strength. Excitation-contraction coupling. If the sarcoplasmic reticulum releases less calcium or the contractile proteins respond less to calcium, each neural signal produces less force. This dysfunction appears after prolonged high-intensity work and in heat stress. Neuromuscular junction. Normally robust, the NMJ can fail in extreme conditions with problems in acetylcholine release or receptor function. This reduces signal transmission and force when it occurs. Lastly, muscle damage. Repeated eccentric actions, lengthening under load, cause micro tears, inflammation, and delayed onset of muscle soreness. This structural damage lowers force and increases recovery time. Rapid increases in eccentric load can raise injury risk. The brain and spinal cord help cause and limit fatigue, often to protect the body. One way is reduced voluntary activation. During long or very hard exercise, the central motor drive can fall. Changes in motor cortex excitability or protective inhibitory signals can lower how strongly the brain tells muscles to contract, reducing output even when muscles themselves could still work. Neurotransmitters affect how hard exercise feels. For example, relatively more serotonin versus dopamine are linked to higher perceived effort and lower motivation. Dopamine supports drive and movement, while serotonin is associated with tiredness. Their balance influences endurance and how willing someone is to keep pushing. The evidence is complex, but these chemical changes help explain changes in effort and mood during long events. Sensory feedback from muscles also impacts central fatigue. Afferent nerves that carry information from the body's organs and tissues toward the central nervous system sense metabolites and mechanical strain in working muscle and send that information to the spinal cord and brain. High afferent firing can blunt central motor drive as a protective reflex and also change heart rate and breathing responses. This link helps explain why local muscle distress can change pace or force even when the brain hasn't decided to stop. Mental factors also alter performance. Extended cognitive work, stress, or mental fatigue increases the perceived effort of exercise and reduces physical output, even if basic physiology looks the same. In short, motivation, attention, and mental fatigue influence central drive and therefore athletic performance. Heat and humidity make the body work harder. More blood goes to the skin to cool you, which lowers central blood volume and can reduce muscle perfusion. Higher core temperature raises perceived effort, disrupts enzyme function, and speeds both physical and mental fatigue. Dehydration and electrolyte imbalances cut plasma volume and cardiac output, weaken thermoregulation, and upset sodium and potassium balance. Those ionic shifts reduce nerve and muscle excitability and worsen fatigue. Illness can raise systemic inflammation and metabolic load, making exercise feel harder and slowing recovery. All these factors interact with central and peripheral fatigue mechanisms, so manage environment, hydration, and health to reduce early fatigue and protect performance. Acute fatigue happens during or after a workout and clears with rest. It comes from things like PCR depletion, metabolite buildup, and short-term drops in central drive. A good night's sleep, easy active recovery, and fueling usually restore performance. Chronic fatigue, such as functional overreaching, non-functional overreaching, or overtraining, is different. Performance stays down for weeks or months. It is linked to hormonal changes like higher resting cortisol, lower testosterone, immune suppression, and mood problems. Recovery is slow, so monitoring and preventing excessive load are essential. Now we've reached the interactive section of the video, we'll take a look at a hypothetical scenario for understanding the sources and mechanisms of fatigue. Let's get into it. In this scenario, you are the assigned sports science data analyst who has been approached by the triathlon coach of an elite athletics club. The coach has noticed some concerning fatigue patterns among his 12 athletes during the high volume training phase, and they are preparing for the championships, which takes place in 8 weeks. Taking into account the environmental factors and current performance impact, he wants you to take a look at the data and perform some useful analysis. Your task is to analyse the different fatigue mechanisms affecting each group and provide targeted solutions addressing the various sources of fatigue in the motor and energy pathways. A simple readable report with some interventions for the coach would demonstrate best practice here. Let's take a look at the scenario specifics and the relevant data. Pause the video as it appears on screen. Construct your solutions and suggestions now. Possible solutions and suggestions for this scenario can be seen on screen. This includes the solutions for each specific group, A, B and C, with fatigue mechanisms identified and the recommended interventions for each. On the right-hand side of the screen, we can see the integrated environmental and systematic solutions for heat stress management, a multi-source fatigue approach, training load modifications and expected outcomes. As a result of the interventions, we should see improved session completion rates, reduced subjective fatigue scores in the first 2 to 3 weeks, a return to baseline performance levels with enhanced heat tolerance from weeks 4 to 6, and peak performance capacity with improved fatigue resistance from 8 weeks onwards. If you came close to this with your suggestions and solutions, well done. Let's move on to some formative assessment and exam technique. In this section, we'll have a go at some quick-fire multi-choice questions based on understanding the sources and mechanisms of fatigue content which may appear in Paper 1A. Pause the video here, have a go and see how you get on. Let's take a look at the mark scheme so you can self-assess. Okay, good stuff. Next, let's have a go at some data-based, short answer and extended response questions, which may appear on paper 1B and paper 2. For possible short answer and extended response style IB exam questions, you may be required to distinguish between central and peripheral fatigue and give examples of each, or explain the environmental and systemic factors which can impact fatigue. You may also need to use calculations and equations outlined in the sports science data booklet where necessary. On screen, you can see some short answer questions related to the video content. Use the command term key to carefully consider the requirements of each DBQ and ERQ question and construct your answers with the appropriate level of detail. Pause the video now and give them a go. Now let's take a look at the answers and see how you performed. Take a moment to pause the video here to reflect and self-assess. That is the end of the content on understanding the sources and mechanisms of fatigue. We can finish by thinking about the following linking questions from the course guide between what we have covered in this video, topic B. 1.3, what is the impact of fatigue on muscular contraction? Topic C. C3, what is the relationship between motivation and fatigue? And also inquiry 1 from the course guide, do plapezos positively affect recovery? If you found the understanding sources and mechanisms of fatigue subtopic interesting, you may wish to pursue a scientific investigation in this area. On screen, you can see some sports science internal assessment ideas and key considerations you may wish to use to support with formulating a research question. To summarise, fatigue is multifactorial, arising from central neural processes, neuromuscular transmission, metabolic substrate depletion, and metabolite disturbances. It is compounded by environmental and systemic factors. Peripheral signals inform central regulation through afferent pathways, producing an integrated control of output. Practical management requires targeted training to shift limiting mechanisms, careful monitoring with both objective and subjective tools, and recovery strategies.
I'm glad you joined us for today's session, and I hope you gained some clear insight into central and peripheral fatigue, the mechanisms and how it originates. I hope this, along with my other videos, can start to provide a useful tool for revision and learning and can support more people holistically beyond the channel focus of IB Sports Science. If you agree, and if you wouldn't mind, please do me a favour and spread the word to get colleagues and friends to subscribe. It really helps to push out the content. Stay tuned for the next video as we conclude the unit of topic A by looking at the strategies and techniques for exercise recovery. Specifically, we'll look at nutrition, hydration and sleep before examining active recovery methods such as massage, cold water immersion, compression garments and periodization of recovery. Alternatively, if you would like a little refresher on previous content from topic A, I'd recommend looking at this video here. Thanks once again for watching, and I'll see you over on the next one.